Tonight on the Goblin's Corner,
we're interviewing Ali Khamseh.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblin's Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
we're interviewing Ali Khamseh.
That's right. Ali is a writer, director, 1960s movie lover, and occasional actor. He is the man behind AK88 Studios, one half of YASP podcast, and the host of The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind, as well as various other projects. He also loves World of Darkness, and he's here to talk with us today. Ali, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anytime. You are in Iran, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I am in Iran. In the city of Tehran, if you want more specifically.
Sure.
All right. Well, we're interviewing, so obviously we have some questions and we're interested in tonight. First off, tell us a little bit about yourself and any projects that you're currently working on.
Well, as you've put it graciously, I'm a writer, director, occasional actor. I'm not a good one, but if you need a guy that looks like me, I can give you the guy that looks like me. So
I feel
my
the
main
same way.
area. Oh,
we're all three typecast, unfortunately.
Yes.
We've got the big guy, the bald guy, that has out with the bearded guy. That's how it works.
Yeah.
yes. My main area of expertise is writing. I'm first and foremost a writer, and after that I am a director. But generally, I've studied cinema. I love movies. Movies comprise a whole bunch of my life, including hobby and career. But beside that, I also just love fiction and storytelling as a whole. I have a bunch of projects, as you've mentioned. The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind is a personal podcast. It's just me talking for 20 minutes. And YASP is more nerd-centric. It's me and my friend Ami Reza, and we talk about basically each episode is either on a TV show or on a video game. Like we talked about Over the Garden Wall fairly recently, the Cartoon Network miniseries, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
I don't think either of us have seen that. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to check that out.
Definitely. It's 10 episodes. It's not long. But it's great. And AK88 Studios is my pretend movie company name, but it's also my YouTube channel. I posted a bunch of videos last year, and I'm trying to sort of start it back up. I've had a year-long hiatus working on some other stuff, working on a documentary on musicals and stuff like that. So I'm trying to bring it back, and I actually, as I'm speaking, I'm editing the video that is going to be the sort of the comeback.
So you've got a lot of irons in the fire, Ali. You're doing multiple different projects.
Yes, that's the good thing and the bad thing about quarantine. I'm stuck at home, and all of the projects that were on the back burner, they're coming back. And sadly, because I'm quite young, despite how I look, I'm actually not vaccinated yet. It's a long time before it reaches the people in my age group.
Interestingly enough, the quarantine is the reason we started this podcast. So, we understand having nothing to do with projects and stuff.
We were, in fact, just starting to record our 1-year anniversary podcast.
That's right.
Oh, well, yeah. Congratulations on 1 year. I know how hard it is and how taxing it is. So you have a big old congratulations from me.
We haven't killed each other yet, so
it's true.
That's the biggest accomplishment. Because
so I've got to ask, because you mentioned 1960s movies are some of your favorites. Like, what is a specific movie that you love from the 1960s?
Well, my favorite movie of all time is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from 1966.
My man.
Uh,
That's that is I'm a huge fan of spaghetti westerns, so I love The Good and the Bad, the Ugly.
it's
Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, all those. Hang 'em High. Ah, Wild
The
West where
Great
it's happening.
Silence is a great one. And basically, I think 1960s as a general was a very interesting idea. I often say this to people that in 1964, the top four movies of the box office were My Fair Lady, Mary Poppins, Doctor Strangelove, A Fistful of Dollars. And the variety of movies that people went to see, like they were saying, okay, let's watch Rex Harrison sing in a musical, and then let's go watch Clint Eastwood kill a bunch of people. So it's one of those things that wasn't really repeated in cinema history, in my opinion, until the 1980s. But that's because the whole home video, I
Sure.
don't want to say invasion, but revolution.
Invasion works too.
That's very interesting. I never really thought about that.
Me
That's
either. I didn't realize Doctor Strangelove was that high up the chart.
Yeah, it's a odd movie to say the least. First of all,
Yes.
I don't think anyone would even imagine it's a Stanley Kubrick movie. Like when I think of Stanley Kubrick, I don't think Doctor Strangelove. I think Shining or 2001: A Space Odyssey. But this is, in my opinion, one of his best movies, and
It is
it's
actually the
just
movie I think of when I think of Stanley Kubrick movies, but that's just probably because of
oh
the circles I run in.
one of our friends. That is his movie that he watches all the
oh
time.
Yeah.
oh.
So
Well, your friend has a great taste because that's a great movie.
fair enough.
To this day, it's one of those movies, much like the Monty Python movies, that I quote just offhandedly, like "You can fight here. This is the war room."
Right.
So obviously, movies are a big thing for you, and you mentioned that you also have some interest in TTRPGs, so tabletop games, and World of Darkness specifically.
Yes. To be honest, my introduction to tabletop RPGs was to a terrible movie called Mazes and Monsters. I was looking through Tom Hanks's filmography and saw it, and that's a terrible movie.
You are,
But
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, no dissension from me on that one. That is a bad movie.
yeah. But that's the first time I ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons. I just so you know, I live in Iran, so it's not like
Sure.
it's a common occurrence here. So that was the first time I ever heard of like this concept, and I read into it. I read the monster manual for second edition, I think, which is I know now is an odd choice because why would you do that? But
Some of us had to grow up and read those.
Right. We're from that time frame.
Why would you do that? Just look behind Matt at the bottom there. You see nothing but second edition manuals over there.
well, when I started reading them, I think fifth edition was out. Like
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so for me it was odd to go and read that, but that was the first time I learned of it, and it's such a amazing concept. I think Dan Harmon says it kind of good that it's literally like an RPG, but all the other players are people, and the computer that runs it is the mind of another human being. So it can take wild turns that you don't expect. But and I know this might be sacrilegious for many people, and I'm sorry. I Dungeons and Dragons didn't really hook me because as much as I love fantasy, I love vampires even more. And so when I learned that there was a vampire version of that, I said, oh, I need to read that up. And World of Darkness, I did more research into. I actually read the rule books. I haven't been in a game of it yet, but I'm ready to just drop in right now.
We'll get you in a game. Don't
We'll
worry.
figure it out.
Oh yeah, Matt and I've been talking about running a World of Darkness game at Chronicles of Darkness, I guess. with the new stuff, and there's a couple classes I want to play. Like I definitely want to play a Sin Eaters campaign. I want to play a Beast campaign, and then I think just old
That's
school
great.
vampires, man. Vampires against werewolves, creatures of the
You
night.
can't mess with a classic like that. And just as a mention of again 1960s, one of the reasons I love vampires is Christopher Lee and his portrayal of Dracula. I
Sure.
think he was Dracula, even though if the movies wasn't really the best.
Yeah, our taste in movies are very similar. I now my flavor obviously is the giant kaiju, but the 1960s were a wonderful time for giant monsters. There was, I think, them was in the 50s, but there was also, of course, the Godzillas. As I gesture once again behind my co-host here. Also, there was the Blob.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then in the 70s, I think is when was it the 70s or 60s when The Thing came out? John Carpenter's The Thing, which is another good horror movie.
It's 80s. It's
Is that the
1980s,
80s?
I
Oh
think.
yeah, that's early 80s, because it had Chris,
the original The Thing though came out in 1950s, I think. I might be mistaken on that. Don't quote me on that.
I believe you're right.
Yeah. 1960s was more William Castle and Roger Corman stuff that were very popular alongside Hammer horror films, which had Gorgon, a favorite movie of mine, again starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Nice.
Nice.
Have you ever considered combining your interests of filmmaking and TTRPGs or World of Darkness in particular?
To be honest, yes, but and again, this is me going off on a tangent. I'm sorry for that, but I don't know if you've seen it or not. The Dungeons and Dragons movie that starred Jeremy Irons.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes.
I'm sorry that you had to go through
and Dallimore with his delightful, what he had, like blue lips.
Yes,
Yeah.
blue lipstick for some reason.
Because he was cold.
Jeremy Irons, yeah. Jeremy Irons is my favorite actor of all time. I actually have a portrait of him on the wall right now. I can't really show it because it's on the other side, but I love the man. And I saw that movie, and again, I laughed, but I don't think they meant for me to laugh. So I'm always cautious about basing a movie off of TTRPGs because I know that movie did it wrong, but I still haven't figured out a way to do it right, especially since actually the World of Darkness had a TV show called The Kindred, which I don't know if you've seen it or not.
You know, I actually didn't know that.
Oh, I knew it, but I hadn't gotten around to watching it. I
take it was not well received.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, it's disgustingly bad. Like,
so can I hate watch it? Is that something that I would enjoy just hating on it?
I mean, it's not that. It's mostly boring, which I think is the worst sin a piece of media can commit. It's very boring, and so I think the World of Darkness is a world that has a lot of potential for a great story to come out of it, which was the case for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which I think is a great game.
Sure.
But the thing I think we need to understand is that it's the world that's the star, not the classes or the tribes. Basically, it's the world that they create. I oftentimes compare it to early Universal crossover movies like 1940s House of Dracula or House of Frankenstein. I think it's that world, but instead of a house, it's the world of Dracula. Like, the world needs to be at the center stage. But as I said, I haven't figured out a plan for it yet.
This is a good point because a lot of any of the D&D movies, which I'm interested to see the new one that's coming up, see how bad that is. But a lot of A-list actors in that too, guys.
That doesn't mean it can't be awful.
Fair enough. But
Yeah.
one of the things that we say a lot on this show is when it comes to like storytelling, make it about relationships. And also when you're talking about world building, make people give a damn about the world.
Right.
And so that's the problem with some, like, again, the D&D movies, right? Like, I love D&D, but those movies were god awful. And it's because we didn't care about the characters at all. They
Right.
could have lived or died, didn't matter. We didn't care about the world much. And it was, it could have had, it had a lot of potential, but it could have been so much more.
And I mean, for a lot of the problems is it was rushed, right? It's let's show as much as we can with as little narrative reason as possible.
I'm sure there was stuff like budget constraints and
Sure.
all the other factors that you have to think about when you're making a movie. So for those of you who enjoyed the movie,
yeah, the story behind making the movie is kind of a tragic one. I don't know how much you know, but the guy who directed it wanted to just produce it. He bought the right to the D&D IP like when he was 17, and he wanted to just produce it, but he was forced to direct it, and it was his directional debut, so he didn't know what he was
doing.
He wanted Francis Ford Coppola to direct it.
wow. Well,
That's bold.
That is bold. I mean, I'd want him to direct it too. I mean, God, what would have happened if that had actually occurred, folks?
Yeah.
That's got some amazing potential.
Oh, God. If only.
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick would be good too. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That would be a very different movie.
Well, that explains a lot more now. Yeah. Now, I didn't know about that either. That's really cool to think about. Well, what could have been.
Actually, my best version of a D&D movie, I think, needs to have a crazy director behind it. I think David Cronenberg would make a perfect one, because he's the only one who can make something like a gelatinous cube come to life.
Yes. I would also say that there is definitely going to be some incursions from alternate dimensions in that movie. Perhaps some Far Realm shenanigans.
Yeah. I think Peter Jackson could probably do a decent job with one.
I would say, yeah, he could probably do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes it more epic. Cronenberg, I think, makes it more horrifying.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So White Wolf is known for putting out specific city source books like Seattle by Night. Have you ever considered maybe writing up, since you do write, one of the major cities from your era, such as a source book?
Well, actually, to be honest, I've had like fantasies of writing a sort of a one shot like that. What would happen in the World of Darkness, but in Middle East instead of the
So
West,
Tehran by Night type thing?
Yeah, but there's actually it's the name of a book called The Terrifying Tehran. I think that's a great title, and I think it can work because there is a lot of oddities in Iran and in Tehran. For example, there is the sort of I don't know how to explain it well, but there are neighborhoods in Tehran which are very old world, like they were made 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and they have that sort of sense of nobility, like, oh, this is where the elite used to live. And then there is the more modern ones that were made like pre-revolution during the era of the Shah of Iran.
Right.
And they look like okay, this is not a good comparison, but many of them look like Soviet Eastern Bloc buildings, and so it's like this is the middle class,
very brutalist type architecture, stuff like that.
Solid concrete slabs.
Yeah.
Yes, there are a lot of them, and then there are like modern ones that were made post-revolution, and they are just a mess of different architecture. So I think putting them and bringing out like the different styles of vampires among them. I'm sorry, I know World of Darkness has more than vampires, but vampires are my favorite monsters, so I'm gonna go with vampires.
Sure.
And and so bringing all these different kinds of vampires, like the old noble ones that remember a time that things weren't this out in the open, because Iran has this sort of a mysticism to it too. You can't trust anyone. So we're basically living in a masquerade. So they try to cling to it, while the more modern ones want to just have fun and don't see it as that big of a deal to keep on the masquerade.
It would also be interesting to incorporate some of the cultural mythologies and superstitions of the Middle East as well, which, you know, one of the great things that we're seeing now in games is it's not just a Western perspective in terms of, you know, supernatural creatures and stuff. And granted, this is coming from two white guys, but, you know, we're seeing a lot more stuff coming from the East. We're seeing a lot of stuff coming from like the Afro-futuristic stuff. We're seeing, you know, just all different cultures starting to come in and start writing games. And it's a great time to be a gamer because, hey, not only are you going to get a great game, you're going to get a change of perspective as well.
Yeah. And it's great to see cultures presented by those cultures.
Yeah.
As opposed to from a Western lens of, oh, this is completely ridiculous versus, you know, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There is this thing that one of my teachers, my script writing teacher, used to tell me, and feel free to cut it out. It's a bit of a pseudo-political statement, but he says the biggest problem that Iran has is that it's stuck between Iraq, Arabic country, populated not recently, but mostly by ISIS, and Afghanistan, which is a Afghan country, sadly, fairly recently conquered by Taliban, and Iran is stuck in the middle of them and is trying to say, I am like neither of them. I am not ISIS, I am not Taliban, I'm my own thing, but you know, I'm between them. So at least I know for many people it's just a big like slap, because to be honest, for many of Iranians, me included, when I was younger, most of America was like one big state. Like I didn't know there were different states with different cultural backgrounds and different ethnicities. I was like, oh, America is just like, you know, Bill Clinton. Like all of it is just Bill Clinton.
Sure. It's a country full of middle-aged white guys. That's the whole country. I mean, no, I get it. You only know what you see and what you're taught.
And this is why, again, people creating games, people talking, just like we're doing now, kind of breaches that, I guess, ignorance, really.
Yeah.
People don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. The fact of the matter is, all around the world, people are people. Governments are where everything goes wrong. Human beings want to have a good meal, get laid occasionally, and have a good time with their friends. Like, generally speaking,
to quote a great man, all around the world, the same song, just the same old song.
Fair.
All right, so we wouldn't be the Goblin's Corner without a question of the week. Matt, do you got a question of the week for Ali?
Sure. I'm gonna go with the vampire. I was gonna, open the whole thing, but I think we've clearly established a pattern here.
He's a vampire fan.
Yes.
Do it.
So, if you were a member of one of the clans, which clan do you think you would be a member of?
Well, I want to say Giovanni, but the matter of the fact is I'm Toreador. Like, I know I would be Toreador. I would be that asshole in the nightclub sitting like, oh yeah, this is great song, and like criticizing modern art while, I don't know, having like orgies and all of that, because that is basically Toreador life.
I mean, there are worse slaves to have, let's be honest.
Sorting Hat picked him right off the bat, is what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Boom, Rose. There you go.
What would you be, Matt?
Oh, that's a tough call. I'd be a werebear.
So Gangrel? Oh, no, if we're talking vampire?
Once upon a time, I used to say I would clearly be a Malkavian. I think at this point, Ravnos.
Tremere.
Shocking.
I know. Or Malkavian. A little bit of both, really.
I actually chose Tremere when I was playing the Masquerade Bloodline, the video game. I was part of a Tremere clan, and I didn't know the ending was unique to Tremere clan. I thought everyone has that ending, but apparently no. The blood ritual is only for
Yes.
Tremeres.
I mean, you could make it for others as well if you wanted.
Not in the video game.
Oh, it's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not in a video game. Yeah. And I just hope nobody feels like they want to be a Nosferatu.
Well, Ali, where can we find some more of your work?
Well, you can find it on YouTube on AK88 Studios. You can find it on my own personal YouTube channel where I publish episodes of The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind. I publish them on Anchor, and so you can find it on your favorite podcast platform of choice. But I also do it on YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, just pop over there. It's just a picture of the thumbnail. It's
Sure.
nothing there, but they are there. And I actually put a bunch of old projects there too, if you like to see. I put my movie debut on there, which is a 70-minute mess in Persian, and it's about Hammer horror film, so you can find it there. And for YASP, you can find it on your podcast platform of choice. It's YASP, short for Yet Another Podcast.
Ali Khamseh is a writer, director, and so much more. Check out The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind. Ali, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time. I hope I managed to give you as much fun as you gave me.
Did you like this interview? Write to us, info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric at goblinscorner.com, or
Me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
we're on all of the things. Let's talk about a couple of these things that we're on. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitch as
Goblin's Corner.
and
Instagram as The Goblin's Corner.
do you like our show? Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player, YouTube, or Twitch.
Click on 5 stars. Give us a review on iTunes, Podchaser, and YouTube. Click, subscribe, do all of the YouTube stuff.
Feed the hungry algorithm like the ravenous vampires that we are.
Indeed.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Good night, folks.
The Goblin's Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden and Matt Staples.
The music is by the Mighty D20.
This has been a Subterranean production.